We've done a pretty good review of jobs of nouns, and now we're going to actually get into what is a verbal. So you're going to need this handout. We're on activity number 6. You're going to fold it just like our other ones. On the inside, there will be some activities for us to do, but we're going to take notes. You're going to want a highlighter to take notes and do some highlighting and labeling in here, and then we'll walk you through a couple examples, and then you'll do the rest on your own and submit it for and do the exit ticket so we can check your understanding. All right, so your notes should look like this, and we're going to talk about verbals. And a verbal looks like a verb, but it's not going to act like a verb. It's going to do a different job. So we're going to do a general overview of what verbals are, just to give you an idea of where we're headed. And the next couple of sections of activities that you're going to do are going to be broken into 3 sections to cover the 3 different verbals. We're going to work through them one at a time. So your first notes that you're going to take, and if you need to pause the screencast to take notes and write things down, is what are verbals? So a verbal is a word that is formed from a verb, and so it's often confused because it looks like a verb, it sounds like a verb, but within the context of the sentence, it is not acting like a verb. It acts like an adjective, meaning it's going to describe a noun. It might act like a noun itself, or it might act like an adverb, which is modifying or describing an adjective or a verb. And we have 3 different types of verbals. Those are gerunds, participles, and infinitives. We've spent a lot of time this year already talking about infinitives and recognizing them in sentences, but we haven't really talked about their job. So that's what we're going to spend some time doing. And we're actually leaving infinitives to the end because they really are the most complicated job. Gerunds, I think, are kind of fun. So gerunds act like nouns, which is why we spent a lot of time talking about the different jobs that nouns do in sentences, because if a noun can do the job, then a gerund can do the job. The next job is participles. Participles sometimes look a lot like gerunds, but in the sentence they're acting like adjectives. They're describing nouns. And then infinitives act like nouns or adjectives or adverbs. They can do any job, so you really have to have a good understanding of jobs within the sentence. All right, so we've talked about these jobs of nouns before, so go ahead and review them again because they're going to be very important as we talk about gerunds. And I have them in the order of iPods, but remember when we talked about them in analyzing a sentence, I don't actually look for them in this order, but I like to remember them in this order. So indirect object, predicate noun, object of a preposition, direct object, subject, and appositive. So what's the job of an adjective? An adjective modifies or describes nouns and pronouns. We've been doing that a little bit in class. I usually draw an arrow that shows what the adjective is modifying or describing and focusing on that idea that they really describe nouns. And they answer the question, how many, how much, what kind, which one. So sometimes numbers and size and shapes and colors are used as describing words. And then what is the job of an adverb? Adjectives and adverbs begin the same way. So they're kind of similar, but adverbs modify, you'll see they do not modify nouns. They modify verbs or adjectives or adverbs. They can modify themselves. And they answer the question how and when and where and to what extent and why. A lot of our transitions, those single one-word adverbs, like first, then, next, those are words that answer these questions, how or when or where, and they're single words. They're adverbs. So going to the inside of your notes packet now, we're going to talk about specifically gerunds. And so for the next probably 6 or 7 activities that you're going to work on, we're going to focus specifically on just gerunds, but I wanted to give you an overview of what verbals are. So a gerund is a verb that ends in ing. So play, and then ing, playing. Go, going. Hit, hitting. Those are gerunds. So it's a form of a verb that ends in ing, but it acts as a noun. So it's going to do one of those jobs of nouns that we've talked about. And they could be a gerund by themselves, or they could have phrases, their own modifiers. Gerund phrases can have their own modifiers and complements. We talked about complements in the last unit. So complements are words that follow these verbs, direct objects, predicate nouns, and so on. So I'm going to go through some different examples on your paper, and I'm going to do them in the order in which I think you should kind of cover them or look for them when you're looking in a sentence. Okay, so we're looking for verbs that end in ing that act as a noun. And so if they act as a noun, one job they could do is the object of a preposition. So I want you to get your highlighter out, and when I talk about the gerund, I want you to highlight it so we can look at it. Edmund has books about cooking. If you look at this sentence, cooking is the verb that ends in ing. But Edmund isn't doing any cooking here. It's talking about cooking. You've got a prepositional phrase at the end. And so the noun that's at the end of that prepositional phrase is cooking, the verb that ends in ing. So this is a gerund, and it's doing the job of object of a preposition. I want you to highlight that and label it OP. The next job I would look for is the subject, looking to the beginning of the sentence typically. Cooking helps Edmund relax. The sentence itself is about cooking, the act of cooking. So I want you to highlight it and label it with an S. We talked about direct objects. Direct objects come after action verbs and answer the question whom or what. Edmund practices what? Edmund practices cooking. So cooking is the direct object. If there's a direct object and there's still some words between the action verb, we might have an indirect object. I'd ask the question to whom or for what. Edmund gives what? He gives his attention to what does he give his attention? He gives his attention to cooking. The indirect object always comes between the action verb and the direct object, and it answers the question to whom or what. So I want you to highlight cooking here and label it IO. Sometimes we don't have action verbs. We have linking verbs. And if we have a linking verb, our gerund might be a predicate noun. Now this is where this gets really tricky. In the sentence it said, Edmund's hobby is cooking. My sentence is about the hobby. Whose hobby? Edmund's hobby. So hobby is a subject. Now, it doesn't make sense. It might look like is cooking is a verb, but a hobby doesn't have arms. It can't cook. So in this case, is acting by itself as the verb. It's a linking verb, and it's renaming what his hobby is as cooking. Remember, we said with predicate nouns, you can switch the order. I could say cooking is Edmund's hobby, or Edmund's hobby is cooking. So cooking is a predicate noun. Follows a linking verb, and it renames the subject. And then the last one is an appositive. For an appositive, we're looking between commas. His hobby, cooking, requires much skill. You can see it goes back and it renames what his hobby is, similar to how a predicate noun is working, but instead of following a linking verb, it's between commas. So I want you to highlight it and label it a positive. Okay, so hopefully the work that we did to kind of prepare you for these jobs is going to help here, because now we're going to practice labeling some sentences. So I'm going to switch gears. And so this is really what your notes should look like right now. You should have all of these filled in. Well, I didn't fill them in, but you should have them filled in. And you've highlighted and labeled each of these different gerunds. Notice it's the same word, cooking, but it's being used in a different way. So now we're going to try, looking at some different words, not the same one. We're going to go through the same process. We're going to highlight phrases, bracket infinitives, look for our subjects and verbs, look for our complements, and then look for an appositive. Same exact process. Moving is a big job and takes time. The first thing I would do is see if I can find where is the gerund. The gerund here is the verb that ends in ing, so that has to be moving. So I'm going to look for any prepositional phrases. I don't see one. So now I'm going to look for my subject, and it looks like moving is the subject. If I'm not sure if that's the subject, sometimes it's easier to find the verb. I see the verb here is. If I'm not sure what the subject is, I might find the verb first and say, well, what is a big job? Moving is a big job. And then it's a little bit more clear to find what the gerund's job is. Okay, so I'm not going to worry too much about the other complements right now. We're really going to focus on making sure we understand what that gerund is and what the job is. The next question says, what is the point of hurrying? I'm going to go look for my gerund. I see the verb hurry, and it ends in ing, so that must be my gerund. And I'm going to go look for prepositional phrases, and I see the word of what? Of hurrying. There's a prepositional phrase. That must mean that hurrying is doing the job of the object of the preposition. It's at the end of a prepositional phrase. Singing is a tradition in our family. Okay, I only see one verb in there, sing, with an ing, so singing must be the gerund. I'm going to look for prepositional phrases in our family. Well, I can tell that singing isn't the object of a preposition because it's not highlighted. It's not the end of a prepositional phrase. So now I'm going to go look for my subject. What is the subject? Well, I'm not quite sure because that's confusing. Singing sounds like a verb, but I see the verb here is. Is, I know for sure, is a verb. So I might ask myself, what is a tradition in our family? Singing is a tradition in our family. So the subject of the sentence is my verbal here. All right, we're going to do two more, and then I'm going to let you go off on your own and try these. All right, was there a good reason for the scolding? Looking for my gerund. I see scold means to reprimand somebody with an, and then it's got the ing, so that must be my gerund. Now I'm going to go look for a prepositional phrase to see if there's a preposition for. For what? For the scolding. And now I even have a hint here that the is describing the scolding. Okay, so I've got a modifier describing that noun. That means it's doing the job of the object of the preposition. All right, and then the last one I'm going to do with you, and then you're going to do the last ones on your own, and then go do the exit ticket. Says, his favorite outdoor chore is mowing. So I'm going to look for my gerund. First of all, it's mowing. Mow is an action with an ing at the end. I don't see any prepositions in here. So now I'm going to go look for a noun, okay, that acts like my subject. Don't think it's mowing this time. This time I'm going to look, a lot of people have been wanting to label the very first word as the subject, but his is a possessive pronoun. His what? His chore, favorite chore, outdoor chore. So it looks like my subject here is chore. Now I have to decide, is by itself or is mowing the verb? Well, a chore doesn't have arms and legs, so it can't actually mow anything. So the chore is a subject, the linking verb is, and then mowing is the predicate noun that renames his favorite chore. Remember, with our predicate nouns, we can switch the order. So I might say mowing is his favorite outdoor chore. His favorite outdoor chore is mowing. If I can do that, then I know that I've got a predicate noun. If this was a verb, that would not work. All right. So good luck. You're going to do 6 through 10 on your own and then go do the exit ticket. If you need any help at all, then make sure you ask. If you get stuck, go back and listen again as we kind of walked through 1 or 2 of these just so you can get used to the process that you're going to follow.